pleased to have here on the Rich Eisen Show right now. Hopefully, at some point, going to get his Los Angeles Dodgers on a field in 2020. And it looks like there is a proposal on the table that could lead to that. He is a former manager of the year. He is a World Series champion in his own right as a player. He is Dave Roberts. How are you, sir?
Rich, I'm doing well, man. It's good to kind of reconnect, and I love listening to the show and hearing passion from sports fans.
Isn't that great?
It's the best. It really is. And, under these circumstances where obviously the world's different right now, but this is one reason why we certainly need sports back. I love it.
Yeah, it's funny. I had my buddy from NFL Network, Michael Irvin, on last week, and when I texted him, like, do you want to come on the show? And he's just like, absolutely. He goes, I feel like I need to talk sports again. It's been so long since I've talked sports, and that's kind of where we are in this world with me sitting right here at this show. Not to, get too deep with you, but again, you're a guy who manages, right? So maybe you can manage me in a way that I kind of go back and forth. Like, do I want to talk about the real world in terms of what's going on in sports, or just, talk to you about that 2004 season with the Red Sox, or your favorite moment as a player, or your favorite moment as a man? I kind of go back and forth about it, Dave.
Yeah, I'm with you, Rich. And it's interesting. It's like, I think it's like, it's funny is I talk to my wife and my kids all the time, and it's interesting because to understand and appreciate what's going on is one thing, which is certainly front of mind for everyone. But I do think that for us, for my kids, for you, for people to make no apologies for being frustrated or wanting sports or their life back, that's the human feeling. And I think that sometimes we feel like we got to suppress that for fear of shame or being critiqued or judged, where I don't think that that's completely fair, because I don't think that it's kind of mutually exclusive. You can still feel what people are going through, but I still think that I don't think we should feel bad about talking sports and wanting sports. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fair. We hear from people who are saying, I needed a break. So-and-so's in the hospital. I'm wondering about what's going on with my job. And I want to, I want some sports, or I want to talk about it, or, I want to chime in right now. I mean, we hear that all the time right now. And then I look up and I see a highlight from the South Korean Baseball League, and I'm seeing somebody circle the bases, and I'm seeing the crack of the bat, and I'm like, man, oh man, do I miss Major League Baseball? That's what I think about, Dave.
Yeah, and I'm with you, and I think that obviously we're biased because we're tied to the industry, but I see that happening outside of our country, which to each his own, and I understand that. But I do think that with baseball, and you have a grasp on football, basketball, all sports, but I think that with baseball in particular, it's our season right now. I think it's an opportunity, I guess, to kind of put a phrase, to gain some market share back, from football and basketball. I think that being in homes of Americans all over the country, and it just kind of takes me back to my father, who passed away a few years ago, where he said, man, we're in Houston with my siblings. We used to huddle around for that game of the week, whether it be on TV or the radio, and just listen to it or watch it, where baseball has that opportunity. And, yeah, it's going to look different without the fans, but I do think that, and I don't know if you heard this, Rich, is potentially having players, coaches mic'd up, so it gives the fans, the viewers, a different perspective. So this is all contingent that we do get something done.
Okay, so let's get into it a little bit. Dave Roberts, L.A. Dodgers manager here on the Rich Eisen Show. What do you know about the proposal that Major League Baseball ownership and management approved Monday to give to the players, and where that stands right now?
So I think that I know that they proposed it like everyone knows. And now I guess it's in the players' court to kind of counter and to kind of figure out some consensus. So I think that initially, as I understand it, that there was going to be a proration of salaries, but then that was the fine print of the bylaw or whatever was an amendment potentially if we were going to resume without fans. And that's the case right now. So I think there's a 50-50 share of revenues, but I really don't know specifically, Rich, what it intends as far as the regular season, postseason, what that really means. It's kind of above my pay grade.
Sure.
I'm just more motivated that both sides want to play, and I think that there's a bigger picture, for the game itself, for the owners, for the players, for the fans. So I just don't think that any more of a stoppage would make sense.
So what do you know, though, about the actual logistics? Because I imagine that's something you as a manager will really have to master and figure out. And at some point, it's potentially where you will be not only figuring out a lineup card, but who's tested that day and the results back yet before you can fill out a card, right? I mean, like
that's
right?
That's right. And I do think, Rich, that there has to be sufficient and enough quantity to kind of justify it. So whether it's an every other day, a couple times a week, obviously you're going to be tested with temperature each day, trainers, players, coaches. There's going to be some situation where I think they're doing it in Asia where, there's an app where you have to kind of document your symptoms, where you're at, your temperature, before you even get through the door, and then do some kind of hands-on stuff with training staff. I think the rosters will be expanded, which they should be because of an abbreviated spring training, which we're used to as far as, the 6-week versus the 2 to 3 week situation. Don't really know where that's going to be at. I do think that the realignment of divisions, the 3 kind of deal, I think that makes sense as far as geography and kind of keeping players, staff. When you start traveling, you're talking about airline attendants and things like that, keeping them. The less is better. So that's some of the things. I think there's an expanded playoff roster or team situation, which I think also makes sense with it being a sort of a sprint rather than a marathon like it normally is for us.
And what about social distancing, Dave? No dugouts, no clubhouses. I mean, is that something that you're discussing right now? What's the status on something like that?
Well, I do know that if you're talking about spring training in Arizona, you have access to, or Arizona and Florida, you have access to bigger clubhouses because you're used to bigger numbers. But then the numbers that we're used to in regular spring training will be curtailed. But if you're talking about each individual city and stadium that have a spring training, then you're talking about using the others' visiting dugout or clubhouse as well. So that will kind of, now you're getting essentially half your team on the other side of the in the visiting side with the trainers and half on the home side. So that'll kind of allow for the social distancing. That's kind of initial ground floor kind of thinking.
And then in terms of a dugout, will you use the stands if there's no players? And then I guess in terms of a game, you can't use the clubhouse, I guess, right? Except maybe to have to take care of some quick business. Or I'm honestly, like, this is exactly the sort of stuff you need to figure out before you. And as a manager, you need to know this stuff.
You do, and that's why it's like I've worked, and I feel that each of us managers have worked really closely with our training staffs and front office, but no more than this time, because I think that it's certainly way bigger than just baseball. So now these guys are getting the trainers. I say these guys, the training staff is getting information from health officials, which is getting kind of filtered down to the front office, to the coaches, to myself. And so this is something that we need to know in real time every single day. And yeah, Rich, if something does happen, you got to also have an alternate plan for that. And what's the protocol for that? So it's interesting because what we can't do is you can't start baseball to then have to shut it down. So we have to get our ducks all in line. And
how close, Dave Roberts of the Dodgers, how close do you think baseball is to getting these ducks in line as the hashing out between the Players Association and management goes down?
Well, yeah, you know what? I think that ongoing negotiation is one driver. But I also think that, you're talking about state to state. You're talking about the government officials as far as giving us the green light and what we can and can't do. But I think that for our part, as far as the industry, we got to kind of come to some consensus. And then now once we get the green light, hopefully as we look out 2, 3, 4 weeks from now, things will start to get more clear. And that will kind of open up some options. But I think right now, Rich, we're more in the mode of, okay, Players Union and Major League Baseball, figure it out. Let's get it done. And as far as each individual organization, because I've talked to managers around baseball where now internally we're trying to figure out how it looks like for us and have different plans, whether it's a 27, 30, 35, 50 man spring training. Is it here? Is it there? So you're kind of got plan A, B, C, D, and E.
Yeah. my head's spinning, Dave. I mean,
I hear you. Hey, Rich, mine is too.
I bet. And then, so, what about this issue, Dave? And again, I know you're involved in managing a baseball team, but these are such bigger issues too that's in the world. The governor of Arizona says, yes, sports leagues can return in the middle of May, and you're in a county in Los Angeles that's saying, no, we're sheltering in place for another 3 months potentially. So what is that a competition problem? Again, I know that we're talking about life issues, but you're talking about you're going to be managing a baseball team. Would you have an issue if the Diamondbacks had different rules about what they can do and prepare for a game than you?
You know what? It's interesting. That's a great question. And I think that, the overarching, I think it's totally fair for the governor to do that. And I think that when you're talking about state to state, city to city, there's a density situation where Arizona is not as dense as Los Angeles. So that kind of unleashing, taking the reins down, I think that completely makes sense. Now you're talking about the competition thing. Well, you're already looking at a shortened season. I do think that there's a certain, a clear advantage to an organization being able to kind of come together and go to work business as usual and have an extra week to 2 weeks, 10 days, whatever the number of of a ramp up that we wouldn't have. So that's a different discussion. So I think that, the net for me, I would rather teams open up together.
And I guess then again, question, I asked Charlie Blackmon the other day of the Rockies, who I'm imagining you would be in some form of a close proximity or enough to maybe play. He's like, you know what, I'll quarantine if that's what it means. I'll quarantine if that's what it takes. Are you hearing that the teams will have to quarantine? Are you talking to your players about that right now, if we are 6 weeks away maybe from first pitcher?
No, and I applaud Charlie for feeling that way, but I think that every player and family is different, and I think that which is fair, which is real. And I think that the reality or the idea of quarantining solo, I think is unrealistic, the overall, majority. I think that what I do count on is that the players and their families realize how serious this issue is. So once we do kind of move forward, I would like to think everyone takes it serious and is responsible, because, one family member, one player being irresponsible could affect, not only their club, but the industry itself. So there's always going to be some margin of risk, as we all understand that going forward. But I do think that quarantining individually for players is certainly unrealistic.
Heck, I hear you. I mean, you're 10 years removed from being diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. I'm sure you also have members of the staff that are older and potentially in the I guess age range of being more vulnerable. I mean, this is serious business, man, and it is, and that's the thing, is that we can talk baseball. I could talk baseball and sports with you for the next 2 hours, but I do think that it is important for us to kind of, as you kind of brought it to light, is like, you've got to be prepared for everything. It's serious business, and I'm a cancer survivor, so am I more in jeopardy than somebody else that's 25, that's completely healthy, has no history? And it's always one of those things where it's all good until it's not, right? So it's like, I feel good, but if someone is infected and then something really goes down the wrong path, then now what? So we have to really take it serious, which I know we are as an industry and sports across our country. And I think the conversations like this are healthy. But I also think, Rich, as we kind of started this segment, and just talking sports is healthy as well. Yep, absolutely. Before I let you go, Dave, and I really appreciate the time, and next time we have you on, maybe we can go deep into sports. I'll ask you the ultimate question. I'm sure you're being asked by friends, family, if you're on any of these Zoom, dinner parties or anything like that. You must be asked this, so I'll just go ahead and ask it. Do you think this is going to happen? Do you think we will have baseball, Dave?
I do. I do. I think we will play baseball this year. Yes.
I'll go for it, man. If we can all be healthy and do it, my kids cannot get enough. Dave, I have my wife has photographs on her desk at home. And I get emotional talking about this. Of my two boys. I have a daughter who's 6. She wants to go back to Dodger Stadium. Like, she loves going there. But I've got my two boys. I took a quick snap of one of them and a quick snap of another of them, one to the other. If you remember back-to-back home runs that you guys hit off for the Diamondbacks and Greinke, right? I mean, it was – and I took a snap of of my kids seeing a ball leave the yard for a back-to-back home run. They've never seen anything like that before or since, and we need it, man. We need it, but I obviously everybody's got to be safe to do it. You know, it's that simple.
That is so cool, and that's something that your kids are going to remember forever. And that's what the thing is, that these athletes are just so talented, and these moments, yes, Rich, it's going to be different. I'm still hopeful, like I said, but you're going to be in your living room watching the Dodgers, play, and that'll be a lot of fun too. And talk about the players, and that'll be a different dynamic, but it'll be fun.
In the meantime, my wife, the Red Sox fan, will just show them on YouTube you stealing a base against the Yankees in 2004, Dave, and then I'll have to, as a Yankee fan, turn it off. You know, that in the meantime, that's what we'll have to do. You know,
dude, it's all good, man. Me and Derek made amends. Me and Mo made amends, so we're fine. We'll be fine.
You take care of yourself, Dave. I always love our chats. Thanks for coming on.
All right, let's take it easy.
Right back at you. That's Dave Roberts. There's very few like him. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.